What's up, everybody? How you doing? Okay, welcome to Newspaper Liturgy Live. And first of all, this is like the third week, since the return of Newspaper Liturgy Live. Been doing this every Sunday so far. I want to be able to do this so that you guys actually know when it's coming, because right now I've just been doing it straight live through YouTube, which means you don't see like when it's scheduled like you usually do with people who live stream on here. That is usually done because OBS is involved, like Streamlabs or something is involved, and I'm still trying to figure it out. So right now we're just doing straight through YouTube, but yeah, I'm still trying to figure out Streamlabs. I have Streamlabs. I actually did a stream through Streamlabs once, and then I tried it like multiple times after and it failed each time. And so I think I might have just like gotten accidentally extremely lucky when I first did it. Like I accidentally picked all the right options and did everything exactly right. And then the next time I did it, the accidental luckiness was over. I'm just checking if this is working. Okay, we're good. Now, today we're going to talk about this cosmic responsibility for immigrants. Why do I say cosmic? Because on this channel, we talk about things from a Christian leftist perspective. Doesn't mean you have to be Christian to be here or leftist to be here. But lately, I've been really feeling like part of my role as I continue to make this stuff is to first off, wake Christians up to class issues. And second of all, something that I didn't see coming, but I'm now becoming more passionate about, is wake different leftists up to spiritual health. Because what I notice as I've been making more videos, it's like I've seen the Christians come in and people who already have similar views and like, yeah, cool, I agree. But then seeing some leftists coming in, I'm like, I'm definitely not religious, but I like the way you're talking about this stuff. So it's like, I love it. I love people coming from all over. And so with that, I want to talk about this issue from this larger spiritual perspective. But first of all, let's talk about why we're even talking about this week. The thumbnail, if you see, I think I put like the send who back where, because oh man, the big news of this week, Trump's rally in Charlotte when all the crowd was shouting, send her back, referring to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, Minnesota Congresswoman, American Minnesota Congresswoman. Everyone saying, send her back. And it's wild because I think people who are deep into the MAGA world are like, yeah, of course, send her back. Everyone from all sides who are not in the MAGA world all see this as crazy, whether they're people who have always been against Trump, people who are kind of for Trump. People are realizing this is really weird and crazy. Trump then, after a few days when he was asked about the chant, said, I don't agree with what they're saying. And someone was like, well, you probably should have tried to stop it. And he was like, I believe I did try to stop it. I immediately started speaking, and then these news sources pulled that interview and then matched it up with the actual footage, and just you see Trump standing there for 13 seconds, silence, basking in the chants of send her back, and he doesn't start speaking again until the chants start to quiet down. And so obviously he's a liar. I think if there's anybody, the fact that there's anybody out there, especially Christians, who won't admit that Trump is a liar, man, it's like, it's legit getting to a point where I don't know what's happening, like in your brain, like it's not even it's legit getting to the point where like you need help. Like you need to go to the doctors. This isn't like me making fun of you. This isn't me trying to bag on you. Like you need serious help if you think Trump is not a liar. And so it's so interesting to see this. And then, of course, Ilhan Omar, the happy ending for several liberals was then her coming to the Minnesota airport and then a huge crowd of her supporters saying, "Welcome home, welcome home." And honestly, I'm not. I don't really care all that much for this for Congresswoman Justice Democrat stuff. There's a bunch of neoliberals who don't want to do anything really about capitalism. Just like the most radical thing they want probably is just a few more social programs. And I think a lot of the attention around them is just the typical personality liberal personality worship that is kind of annoying. And so I don't really care all that much about her, but I wish the people who came out in radical support of her kept that same energy for all people who are being told, get out of here, go back to where you came from, send her back, send them back. And first of all, let's read that tweet, because it's funny how Trump was like, yeah, I don't agree with that, as if like they were doing it completely on their own, but he riled them up to get there through his own logical conclusions. And it started with this tweet here. Let's read it. He said, is where it started. So interesting to see progressive, this is July 14th. So interesting to see progressive Democratic Congresswoman who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, and inept anywhere in the world, if they even have a functioning government at all, now loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? Then come back and show us how it is done. These places need your help badly, and you can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. It's ridiculous, like absolutely, obviously racist and xenophobic. And then even at the rally, he adopted the popular KKK slogan that he's said multiple times now: love it or leave it. If you don't love it, then get out of here. Love it or leave it, which is so un-American and ridiculous. And what's funny is last week, I'm gonna say something actually he tweeted today. Like right before I started recording, I went, let me see if he said anything else recently. It gets more ridiculous. I remember last week on Newspaper Liturgy, I talked about how one of the signs of legitimate Orthodox fascism is to talk about your enemies as if they're both very weak and very strong. And I talked about how Trump and Mike Pence talk this way about immigrants. Let me actually tell you where I got that from. I'll read it straight from the source that I got that from. It was this old article written by Umberto Eco in this article called Your Fascism. And it's the 14 signs of fascism. Go Google that afterwards if you want. And number 8, let me read that out. Number 8 of the 14 signs of actual fascism says the followers must feel humiliated by the ostentatious wealth and force of their enemies. When I was a boy, I was taught to think of Englishmen as the 5 meal people. They ate more frequently than the poor but sober Italians, which he was Italian. Jews are rich and help each other through a secret web of mutual assistance. However, the followers must be convinced that they can overwhelm the enemies. So it's like, yes, they're eating more. They have their own secret cabal, but not strong enough to overtake us. So it's like the followers must be convinced that they can overwhelm the enemies. Thus, by a continuous shifting of rhetorical focus, the enemies are at the same time too strong and too weak. Fascist governments are condemned to lose wars because they are constitutionally incapable of objectively evaluating the force of the enemy. And let me read you a tweet 10 hours ago. Trump said, I don't believe the 4 congresswomen are capable of loving our country. They should apologize to America and Israel for the horrible, hateful things they have said. They are destroying the Democrat Party, but are weak and secure people who can never destroy our great nation. Oh my God, they're apparently dangerous enough that I have to constantly be talking about them, constantly critiquing them, constantly talking about how dangerous they are and destructive they are. But at the same time, they're too weak and insecure to ever do anything because we're still in control, people. Don't worry. I legit cannot like it's like, okay, when Trump was elected, I was able to see, okay, I could get why people support him. People who are working class, people who felt like Obama completely ignored all their needs and feel like the only way out of their terrible situation is to put in someone like Trump, no matter how ridiculous he is. I got that. Now I'm at a point where I legit, I can't mentally make any jumps to think of any reason a rational person could support him. I want to. I really, really want to, because I don't want to be closed off to people, especially people who feel like their very real material needs can only be met by supporting Trump. There are people out there like that. They're probably wrong and deceived and manipulated, but there are people like that. And I wish to understand what's going on. But it's a lot of brainwashing, a lot of propaganda, also a lot of propaganda that has come from the moral majority and the religious right from the 70s and 80s that is now carried over to putting Trump into office. And so I do understand a bit of that, but I also at the same time understand that this is the source of it is a few manipulative men from the 80s, like shifting the evangelical party completely and then making it to what it is today. And also I want to read this too. Article from Charlotte, North Carolina, the Charlotte Observer. The title from the editorial board called Send Her Back, a dark reminder of who we are. And I said, the chant rose quickly from a handful of voices to a chorus of bigotry. It was a chilling moment. It was lock her up in a white hood. It was despicable. Could have happened at any Donald Trump rally. It might have happened in any state, North or South, but it happened in Greenville in our state, and it was one of North Carolina's darker moments. And then toward the end, they also said, but there was some backlash this week when people pointed to the president's Sunday tweet and declared that it wasn't who we are, because it is, of course, part of who we always have been in America and in North Carolina. It's who we were in Wilmington in 1898. It's who we were when Dorothy Counts made that first walk to Harding High. It's who we were when we redlined black residents out of white neighborhoods decades ago. It's who we were on a July night in Greenville, and it could be what's coming to Charlotte next summer. Send her back, Donald Trump supporters chanted, without seeing the irony that it was they who were moving backward. Send her back, they cried, and it was both a reminder and a warning that here in North Carolina, in America, going back is not that far of a journey. Yeah. That's like heavy stuff. I think about how so many, like, I want to focus on the Christians here. So many Christians have been convinced that Republican values and religious values are like one and the same, completely fooled, completely manipulated, completely deceived. And I think about how whenever I hear this stuff, I'm reminded of scripture after scripture after scripture, and I think, how can you like read this thing, tell everyone how literally you take it, throw scriptures at so many people, talk about how important it is to your life, but then ignore such huge chunks of it that are all over the Bible, Old and New Testament. And I wanted to read some of those verses here. Here's some verses for you. Because first of all, it's like the whole story begins with this Israelite tribe enslaved in Egypt. And then they're liberated. And then they're taken to a mountain where they're given commands of how to live now as a new type of people. And God gives them this mission of like, I want you to be my holy nation, my nation set apart, whose mission is to bless all the other nations. a tribe to bless all other tribes, a family to bless all other families, so that you, as you grow, you never become what I just freed you from, Egypt. And so here are commands so that you may maintain this life and community of justice and righteousness among you. And then as the story goes on, they end up saying, nah, we'd rather like have what all the other nations around us have. So never mind. Let's give us a king, please. And God's like, no, no kings. That's a bad road. And like, give us a king, please. And then gets a king. And then like the second or third king, Solomon, then builds a temple for God using slaves, even though they were slaves before. And then God, after a while of this, kicks them out of this land that he had given them, the exile in the Old Testament. And the exile is actually a big part of the narrative of the Old Testament that actually a lot of Christians don't know is there. Like they don't realize like all those prophet books, they're there in response to the exile, either the coming exile, warning of the exile coming, or after the exile, saying over and over, hey, guys, remember what God told us? Like, remember that we were supposed to be a nation that blesses all the other nations and took care of each other and took care of the poor and the widow and the orphan. And yet we totally didn't listen and rejected it. This is why this is happening around us. That's all the prophets, which is a huge chunk of the Old Testament. And yet people just read little bits of it and just apply it in very weird modern ways without realizing the context. And in that crying out for someone else to save them like they were saved when they were in Egypt and now in Babylon, those crying outs is where we get the Messiah prophecies, because they're crying out to be saved once again. And then Jesus of Nazareth comes in the New Testament and is there to remind them once again, hey, you had a calling here to be a nation that blesses other nations, a family that blesses other families, a community that blesses all the other communities, a community that exists to be the source of justice and righteousness, taking care of everyone that comes in. And then he leaves, and that's how the Christian movement starts. That's the whole Bible. I just gave you the entire Bible. So we have verses like and Deuteronomy, one of the commands, when I said they got sent to that Mount Sinai, and he was giving them commands for how to be a new type of people. And he said, you shall also love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Yeah, that whole thing that you hear a lot these days from liberals about how like, we're a nation of immigrants, therefore we need to love all immigrants. When you hear that, please don't think of that as like a very modern America trademark thing. No, that's very much an ancient idea. And you can even find that in the Bible, in Deuteronomy of all places. Love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Or let's read Leviticus 19, where he says, the alien who resides with you shall be to you as the citizen among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I'm the Lord your God. It's funny, like that bit at the end, I'm the Lord your God, seems like just randomly thrown in there. But usually when you find that phrase in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, I'm the Lord your God, it's usually a reminder of like, hey, do this, actually take care of the poor, actually take care of the foreigners, actually welcome in strangers when they need help. I am the Lord your God. It's like, because remember the original calling I gave you all. Or remember who we are here. And so let's read some more. And another Leviticus 27 says, cursed is anyone who withholds justice from the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow. Then all the people shall say amen. Now this is wild here, because if you're not religious or whatever, it's like, cool. The like to take care of immigrants and refugees and all that stuff. I mean, that's your choice. That needs to come from your own morals. But if you're a Christian, this is like a huge tenet of the Christian faith. And if you are someone who says, I take the whole Bible seriously and apply the whole Bible literally to my life, if you're that person, not only are you someone who is committed to a tradition that takes care of immigrants, but you are also someone who would then therefore believe that if you don't, you're cursed by God. It's like so many of these biblical literalist Trump supporters shouting out, send her back, or at least just thinking it and not actually having the guts to chant it. I mean, if you want to say the whole Bible is literal and the whole thing applies to today exactly how it's written, then you are cursed by your own belief. You are cursed by God. It's like, can't you see that? Okay, let's keep going. We got way more here. And let's go down to Psalms 146. The Lord watches over the strangers. He upholds the orphan and the widow, but the way of the wicked he brings to ruin. The way, it's like the people that people are chanting about, get out of here, go back to your country. You don't belong here. Go back to your whatever. They are the ones who Psalm says the Lord watches over and takes care of. And the ones who are saying go back are the ones who God says is the wicked that he will bring to ruin. And then let's see here. Oh, Ezekiel 47. Because you may be thinking here like, okay, yeah. Take care of immigrants. I'm for that. Like they could come. But don't take money out of my pocket to take care of them. These immigrants can't come over here and then expect us to give them money to survive. They can't. They're going to run us dry. All right, fine. Ezekiel 47. You shall allot it as an inheritance for yourselves and for the aliens who reside among you and have begotten children among you. They shall be to you as citizens of Israel with you, and they shall be allotted an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. Over and over and over and over, as I get deeper and deeper into this stuff, it continues to feel like conservative Christians don't actually read the Bible. And yet I know they do. So maybe they don't care about the Bible, or maybe they just stick to a few verses. It's so weird. Like, legit, like the immigrants, welcome them in and then give them money and then give their kids money too, even though they were born here. Oh my gosh, this is radical stuff. This is radical stuff that Trump would tweet about and tweet against all day. All right, let's keep going. Saying, okay, so if you may be hearing this and like, okay, yeah, Damon, that's the Old Testament. Because you could even hear me saying that stuff about the cursed stuff and say, I'm a biblical literalist. But I don't believe I'm cursed, even though it says that, because that's the Levitical law. That's Leviticus. That's the Old Testament. I'm a Christian. I don't follow the Old Testament. I'm not like that. Hold on. I think I'm out of focus here. Sorry. Okay, it's a little blurry, but whatever. I don't follow the Old Testament. And you may be saying, yeah, all that stuff. But here's the thing. The New Testament actually goes harder, because in the Old Testament, you have things about God takes special care of the foreigner, the stranger, the immigrant, and the poor, and watches over them differently. And then you get to the New Testament, and the New Testament says God literally is the foreigner and the stranger and the poor. It goes way harder. It doesn't get more lenient. Like Matthew 25, he says, or Jesus tells the parable of the goats and the sheep, and he says, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Truly I say to you, as you did to the least of these, you did to me. It's like that's Jesus' understanding of judgment. is he's going to remind them of the times that they fed the hungry or didn't feed the hungry, gave drink to the thirsty or didn't, welcomed in the stranger or didn't, visited the people in prison or didn't, and then by that say, yeah, all those times that you did that stuff, you did it for me. And all the times you refused to, you're refusing to do it to me. That's what I mean. It goes way harder. Not only is it the Old Testament saying you have to take care of the immigrant, and if you don't, you are cursed. He goes way further and says, yeah, keep doing that. Also, when you don't, you're literally kicking me out when you try to get rid of the immigrant. That's the source of where God is to be found among the least of these. Exactly, of course. So Hebrews as well has something where it says, let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those who are in prison as though you were in prison with them. Those who are being tortured as though you yourselves were being tortured. This demands us, for those who decide to take those words seriously, to see these videos and photos of people imprisoned and tortured in these detention centers, in these concentration camps, and feel such empathy and compassion that it's as if we were there with them. That's the cosmic responsibility and demand that is upon people who decide to commit themselves to this tradition. It's not on anybody else. I'm not saying everybody has to be committed to this. Of course not. I'm saying the people who have already chosen to be committed to this. This is what you're committing to. This is why Jesus says things like, pick up your cross and follow me. It's like, witness the way I lived my life unto my own death, and then you go and do the same thing, because it's going to be just as difficult as you saw the difficulties that I went through. And by the way, the difficulties I went through is the same difficulties that all the least of these go through all the time. It takes very special care of the least of these, of the poor, of the immigrant. He even tells a parable about the rich man and Lazarus. Says there's a man named Lazarus who always goes to the gate of the rich man, is always begging for food and is suffering and is dying. And one day he dies. And then one day the rich man who spent his whole life ignoring Lazarus dies too. And then suddenly the next scene, Lazarus is safe and comforted next to Father Abraham, and the rich man is in Hades in agony, and he's calling out, please tell Lazarus to get me water because I'm suffering down here. And Abraham's like, sorry, there's a great chasm between us. Now, I don't think that this story should be taken literally. Like, that's literally was the exact what it's exactly going to look like after we die. Some people are going to be like in Abraham's arms for all eternity, and then other people are going to be like, dang, Abraham. No, it's not going to be, that shouldn't be taken literally. It should be actually read as, oh, I see the twist here. Lazarus spends his life in agony. The rich man spends his life in comfort. And because the rich man chose for things to be this way, they're judged by their places being switched, where the rich man is in agony and Lazarus is in comfort. Lazarus spent his whole life begging, please give me something, I'm in agony. And now the rich man is begging, please give me something, I'm in agony. To show that God actually does pick sides. And that's the theme of all the verses we've been reading. God chooses sides. That's really the gist of liberation theology, which is pretty much the type of theology that I'm so committed to that it's hard to see any other type of theology for me. It's like I've gotten to a point where liberation theology just feels like theology. And so a big part of liberation theology in the beginning was to say this tenet that God has a preferential option for the poor and to read the whole Bible from the perspective of the poor and the marginalized and the oppressed and the immigrants. And so when we do that, we're actually exposed to the actual thing we're committing to, which is very difficult and very hard, which is also a big reason why I'm not concerned with trying to convince non-Christians to be Christian. This is hard stuff. Like, I'd be asking you to be committing to a lot of responsibility, really heavy stuff. Because if you decide to commit to being a Christian, commit to taking the Bible seriously, you're committing yourself to this understanding that you have a cosmic responsibility to feed the hungry and take care of the poor and to give drink to the thirsty and to welcome in the immigrant and to visit the imprisoned and take care of the sick. And this is an addition that isn't exactly worded well in the Bible, but I believe the idea is there and is especially important for our modern time. And to do what we can to stop systems that keep that happening. Not only do we, like Pope Francis said, not only do we say thou shalt not to people that kill, but we also need to say thou shalt not to systems that kill. And so, yeah, so I would apply that to capitalism today. If you didn't get what I was getting at, I would apply that to capitalism today, that we need to be able to say thou shalt not to systems that keep this going. And when I'm able to see, okay, yes, this is the cosmic responsibility given to us. This is exactly what it means to be Christian. It makes me like, oh yeah, of course. And when people like online or in person talk about Christian stuff, what does this have to do with leftism and justice and trying to take care of the oppressed and the marginalized? I'm like, are you serious? This is like the whole thing. This is exactly what Christianity is, exactly what Jesus is. This is exactly what we're talking about here. And it's been twisted and manipulated, and so have so many other ways of life and so many other ideologies that were initially about actually taking care of people. People will always try to twist things in order to gain more power. But I'm following a different stream. I know the stream I'm following. I know the source of it, and therefore I ignore the clanging cymbal of colonizing Christianity. Yeah. And so I think that's all I wanted to say. And let me check something real quick. I think we have a couple of people in here. What's up, dudes? Or people, sorry. What's up, people? So I want to... Who is this? Sorry. It's hard for me to see comments because, like I said, I'm doing this straight through YouTube, and so it's even harder for me to see it. Lone Wolf Sarah said, bro. What's up, bro? All right, I'm basically done here. I basically said everything I want to say, unless anyone in here wants to say anything. Oh yeah, somebody came in here and tried to troll. It doesn't matter. Lone Wolf Sarah, I enjoyed it. Cool. I think you came in a little late, so you can see the rest after I end this in a little bit. Shout out Lone Wolf Slayer. Thanks for being here. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I can keep making videos about this stuff, keep talking about Christianity, leftism, justice, liberation theology, of course. Let me know if you have any other ideas, if you watch this whole video, of stuff you want to hear me talking about, whether that's like some current events, stuff you've been thinking about, stuff you've been wrestling with. And yeah, we'll keep making videos about all that. Thanks for watching, and see you later. Okay, bye-bye.